Welcome to our school board interviews. I am Reverend Corinne Mack, president of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg NAACP. These interviews were done on an individual basis to allow you to hear directly from each candidate. Please take the time to listen carefully. But before I go any further, I must thank two phenomenal women, Ms. Annette Albright, who is our educational chairperson, and Mrs. Terrell Nichols, who is our political action chairperson. These women have done so much work to ensure that we elevate not only our children in the educational system, but this process. Please take the time to listen to every interview and make a decision as to who best serves you, your children, and your family. It's so important that we are involved in this process. This branch, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg branch, led the charge in the lawsuit against the state legislators for educational inequity, violation of the Land Law Act. That lawsuit will directly change the lives for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and children at risk. Educational equity is imperative. We're talking about our children and their futures. And so the work that we do on a daily basis is to ensure that we have a just system. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you enjoy every interview. God bless you.
I am Lisa Klein. I am the candidate for School Board District 5. I have 39 plus years of educational experience. 29 plus of those were spent in CMS. I was a teacher, a curriculum developer, and finally an administrator over the time. But most importantly, I was a parent for 15 years. Both of my children attended CMS schools and graduated from Myers Park High School. I am a servant to the community. I believe that I have been called to service in education. And even though after I retired, I came back during the pandemic and worked with children to help them overcome learning loss during that period. I am a strong proponent of safety, accountability, and building a more positive relationship between the community and the schools. I do not believe in banning books. I do believe in common sense approach of books so that we have the appropriate books at the appropriate level. I was a former social studies teacher, and I believe in teaching history. And there was an old movie that I always use, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Regardless of what our history was, we need to be teaching what history actually happened, regardless of how bad it was, because if we forget history, we are bound to repeat our mistakes. That's a good question. And that's the first time I've been asked that question. I don't know if there is a way to fix it without all of the community coming together, because I have worked in districts before coming to CMS in which all schools started at a normal, decent time, particularly high schools starting at 8:30 and ending at 3 o'clock. And there wasn't a busing issue when you're talking about transportation. If we're talking about busing for equity issues, I think we have to look at every school and the needs of the community. I was in a meeting a few weeks ago, and I was talking with a gentleman who was doing repairs to Garinger High School. And Garinger High School has been around a long time. And to bring it up to code, we're looking at an issue of equity. That school is falling apart, but we're putting in new HVAC systems. Is that fair to that community when you build a new high school in Palisades, which is needed for the number of people going in, but we have to balance it. There are many elementary schools that are over 50 years old and are not up to code. The classrooms are incredibly small. So we have a huge list of schools that need major repair. At the same time, which is it going to be more cost effective, to tear it down and build another school in its place? We just opened up West Charlotte, which was badly needed, and it was a rebuild. And we're opening up another high school in South Charlotte in 2 more years, which is needed. So we have to prioritize our needs and go through and see what we can do to meet the needs of the community. For a few years, CMS was giving free breakfast to all children, and we need to make sure every child has food, because they can't learn. And not every child comes to school having a breakfast or even having lunch. So we need to get the food in our children so that they can learn. So I believe that every child who qualifies for free breakfast and free lunch should have it without any discussion. I also believe that every child, if during the summertime, the free lunch programs are set in place, that the schools are seen as a place for the community to come get food and have the nourishment that's needed so that they can learn during the day. There's a lot that can happen. First of all, I'm a strong believer that we have to have a better relationship with the smaller municipalities such as Huntersville, Pineville. Matthews already provides an SRO at every elementary school. We need to see as a school community that relationship with those other smaller areas. CMPD is experiencing a shortage as it is. We need to possibly get retired police officers to come on to the CMS police force and move funding into that area. Every elementary school should have at least one campus security associate so that it allows the children to feel safe, the teachers to feel safe, and they can learn. And that's a big focus. Also, training needs to be placed for all teachers where that they learn new safety procedures. What was safe 20 years ago is no longer safe. The protocols are different, and we need to train our teachers in that way. But again, we have to have more security people. We also have to have more mental health community activists into the schools, social workers and counselors, so that when children are experiencing emotional difficulties, they can pinpoint it and maybe be prevented of any school violence. I worked on the west. I was one of these lucky people. I worked on the east, the south, and the west side of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. When I was in the schools on the west side, we had extra monies and teachers were paid extra monies to go into those schools so that we could focus on raising the performance. We were beginning to close the gap at West Mecklenburg High School. We were one of the 4 schools that Judge Manning suggested be closed down, get rid of everybody. We came together, we worked as a community, and we got tutoring. And I just noticed in the Charlotte Observer, they're now having after school tutorials. They should have had this all along. We had extra teachers that would come in and work with students so that we could close the gap, and we would zero in on targeted teaching. If they were low in reading, we targeted their reading skills. We weren't just teaching to the test. We were teaching them how to read. We were teaching them those mathematical skills. And it may take longer. It may not take only one course. It may have taken 2 courses, but it helped prepare these students so that we raised our graduation rate and we closed the gap. In District 5, I see the number one problem is the lack of knowledge about what goes on around us. There's so many people in District 5 who have left this district because they are not satisfied with instruction and with the schools. And it would be nice to get those families back in the schools. There's, for every new child that's enrolled, 10 families have left. That is not a good school system. We need to have every child who wants to be in CMS feel like that this is the school system that they want to be in. You moved to Charlotte not to put your child in a private school, but to put them in the public schools. I would love that our schools were the schools that my children attended 20 years ago, and it's not that way any longer. So in District 5, it's getting the families back into the schools and feeling that they are receiving the quality of education that every child, regardless of the district, deserves.
I want to thank the NAACP for giving me this opportunity. My name is Trent Merchant, and for those who've been around Charlotte for a while, hopefully they remember that I was an at-large member of the CMS school board from 2006 to 2011. I joined a broken board in 2006, and 5 years later, we won the Broad Prize for urban education. And that's given to the large urban school district in the country that does the best job in making gains and achievement and accomplishment in overall student achievement, as well as closing gaps among students of color and students in poverty. I'm a parent of a CMS student. We've been parents, my wife and I, for since 2007. We've had 3 children in CMS. We will be CMS parents until 2026. I'm an executive search consultant, which means that I help organizations find senior leadership talent. So I think I'm really set up well for our superintendent search. I also set up the first ever talent function at a company that we grew to $5 billion before then leading the international division of that company. Early in my career, I was a teacher, coach, a theater director, had a stint for a while in what is now called Accenture. It was then called Anderson Anderson Consulting, apologize. I'm excited about this opportunity. I think we've got a great chance to get everybody in Mecklenburg County on board with what should be our greatest unifying mission, and that is serving our children and making sure that they're prepared to be successful, responsible adults. You know, when I was on the board previously, I can think of one book that was in an elementary school, and we decided, that probably doesn't belong there. But the board didn't take any action. We let the media specialists handle that. When I'm on the board, we will ban no books. You know, there's a group that's been getting some traction called Moms for Liberty in Florida and Tennessee. They've tried to do things in Tennessee like ban Ruby Bridges Goes to School by Ruby Bridges. It's a book for first graders, and they objected to Norman Rockwell painting from that era that was depicted in the book. So look, I have a master's degree in US history, and we teach the truth, right? We teach facts. Some of those facts make us really uncomfortable, but that's how we grow, and that's how we become better Americans, honestly. You know, it's the truth that the founding documents of this country codified slavery. It's a fact that the secession documents of all the seceding states in the Civil War included a call to expand slavery. Now, they did it under the guise of states' rights. So, look, the culture wars have no place in our schools. We all need to be on the same page in making sure that our students have access to facts and have safe space for discussion. There are going to be books in the library that maybe I don't want to read, but I'm not going to try to prevent everybody else from reading them. Don't check it out. Schools should be open and have access to as much information as possible. CMS has always given parents the option to opt out of books that were in the curriculum. I can think of one. He's our lieutenant governor. And there's no place for that. Again, we should leave it to experts in the field. Again, where this is coming from, there are people who try to say both sides, right? And political extremes. It's really not that. It's right-wing extremists who are trying to censor information that makes them uncomfortable. The reality from my view, anyway, is that, discussion of systemic racism as a foundation for our country should not make one uncomfortable unless they are a racist. I believe that we teach history to avoid harmful patterns of the past. Science is never the answer, but the whole idea of scientific discovery and scientific method is that we keep getting closer and closer to the truth by repeating objective methods. And so, people who are opposed to that, I guess I understand. I'm trying to be generous and say, look, I understand the fear. I understand that there are some conversations that maybe you want to have with your own child that you don't want them to have in school. My only, I guess, caution would be most parents have good intentions, but never have those conversations, or they have them way too late. And again, when it comes to, certain topics, CMS has always given parents the ability to opt their child out. So I hope that answers the question. CMS, first of all, I think it's important for people to know that CMS is I believe it still is the largest transportation providing organization in the state of North Carolina. And, so there's a lot of moving parts, literally and figuratively. We have had trouble in CMS in recent years getting drivers and mechanics consistently. One of the problems is that CMS has been a training ground for cats. So, they pay better. So I do think we need to take a very focused approach to getting the right talent. We actually have the opportunity in our high schools to partner with, experts in automotive, and we do some of this, and with CPCC and other to actually train mechanics who could go right into the field. When it comes to the routing and the apps and so forth, as a parent, I feel you. I still get app notifications about my son's middle school bus ride. He's a high schooler now. So I don't know, it's a challenge, but I think it is a symptom of what we're experiencing in the whole economy, where we're trying to find people who want to do these jobs. Better pay is certainly something we need to look at, better working conditions, better training, and more consistent hours. I don't have a really easy answer for that, but it's certainly something that has my attention, because if kids can't get to school consistently, they can't learn. We've got to do both. And be real honest, for a long time, one of the things that CMS did was defer maintenance and defer maintenance and defer it to the point that it would become, emergency level. And then instead of having to spend the money on maintenance out of the operating budget, they would spend it out of the capital budget, out of bond money. I understand that approach. I don't think it makes sense over the long haul. The reality is that we've got to do both. Some facilities People look and they say, well, that's a solid school. It's been there since 1962 or whatever. When you really look at the costs of doing a renovation to get it up to speed with other facilities versus knocking it down and building a brand new facility, sometimes it's cheaper to build a brand new facility, and we're going to have a facility that delivers better indoor air quality for students. It's safer for students and for teachers. It provides more flexibility and better facilities. So, I think we've got to take a both and approach rather than an either or approach. I want to make sure that our facilities are equitable in their quality and in their ability to deliver instruction as well as extracurriculars. And so, there's a lot of factors that go into it. When we put together the 2007 bond, we had a matrix that scored the different sites for, should this be a renovation? Should it be a replacement? I actually spent a lot of time on site seeing for myself because I wanted to see. You say there's a mold issue. Show me what you mean. Where is it? Why can't we fix it? Why do we need to replace? Those sorts of things. It takes a lot of time and effort and understanding. And I think I bring that kind of understanding, having been in corporate America and worked for a company that had 150 distribution centers. I don't know that we have a problem everywhere. The way that I view child nutrition is through the lens of keeping the main thing the main thing. CMS has to focus on raising the bar for student achievement and closing gaps in student achievement. If kids are hungry, if kids don't have consistent access to nutrition, it's proven they're not going to do as well. So, I know that when I was on the board and some of the things that I've seen during COVID have included, this is a school where so many kids have meet the requirement for free lunch or reduced price lunch and access to free breakfast. Let's just give it to everybody. Let's get everybody here. I like that approach. But for the most part, nutrition, it comes from federal dollars. It's passed through money. What we have to do is just execute consistently and fairly in using that money for its intended purposes. A school where I taught has, not while I was there, but since, had an armed person on their campus. This was in Atlanta. My daughters were at Myers Park when there was a panic, and the reaction was not consistent. There were kids running through the cafeteria screaming, going out through the kitchen. My daughter was in a mobile unit. They didn't even react. The teacher even said, the door doesn't really lock, so what's the point? That terrifies me. So I think we can do training that comes in a way that is not traumatic to students and teachers. Certainly, all new renovation and construction needs to include critical safety measures that have been proven in other places. A lot of it comes down to culture, though. And now I want to be really clear. I don't think that mental health and bullying are the causes of school shootings. The reason we have so many problems with guns is that we are the only country in the world that has more guns than people. So let's be clear about that. But most people who come and do damage to a school are hyper local. That means they were, they're from the neighborhood. They were a student at that school at one point. That they are known entities. So what I have heard from limited numbers, so it's anecdotal, but of students in middle school and high school is that our bullying education can be much more robust. And I think we've got to make sure that we're creating cultures that are healthy, that are safe, not only physically, but emotionally and intellectually. And the only way we get there is through great leadership on our campuses. We've got to make sure that we have that on every campus. I hope that begins to answer that question. It's not a simple one. A lot of it is about leadership and culture. It's the same curriculum, right? the inputs are different in terms of the people. And I don't mean just the students. I mean the teachers and the leadership on campus as well. Where I would start is with this. We've got to get a superintendent who is a true leader, who's not a reactionary, who doesn't get paralyzed like we've had with some previous superintendents. They have to bring in strong talent, A players at tiers 2, 3, and 4 of the senior leadership team. It seems like there are times when our senior leadership team does not talk to each other, and that's inexcusable. So we've got to all get on the same page. I like that we have added, that we've gone from 6 learning community superintendents to 9 so that they can spend more time with their principals. The reality is the best principals hire the best teachers. The best teachers want to work for strong leaders who are going to have their backs. So we've got to make sure that we get the best principals in front of the schools and the students who need them the most so that we can begin to build healthy cultures. Now, there's some things that the school board can do that we did when I was on the board before, such as providing, additional funding, providing additional resources, giving the freedom and the flexibility for those principals to execute, and so that we have their backs so that they can have their teachers' backs. Micromanagement never makes a crisis better. We've got to let site-based leaders do their thing and support them in doing so. District 5, and I think everybody knows this, is one of the, I would say, wealthier 2 or 3, maybe the wealthiest district in CMS. There are a lot of people who are older and don't have students in CMS. Either they're older or they're in private schools or parochial schools. So there are a number of people in my district who feel insulated from public schools. I think that's a mistake. We've got to find a way in District 5, especially because there are a lot of resources here, to get the community engaged through volunteerism, through other types of support for their schools. So that's one thing. We are going to open a new school that is going to technically be in District 6, but it's going to relieve overcrowding in District 5. We have 4 outstanding high schools right now in Myers Park, South Mac, Ardrey-Kell, and Providence. The goal should be to create 5 great high schools out of those 4. If we don't do that and we create a problem, and where it would be, I'm going to be real clear, it would be at South Mac. So we've got to pay attention there and make sure that we create 5 great schools so that then we can set that and turn the board's attention to other districts that have greater problems than we have right now in 5. I would like to have great, consistent schools across this district so that we pull more families back to CMS. But nothing's on fire here. It could be better and parents have options. So we've got to put a better product out there. But I'm also mindful that the District 5 rep has always been most effective when he or she has served not as home team, but as someone who is thinking about the entire county. And that's certainly my pledge when I'm elected.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those interviews. Now is the time to make the decision. I pray it was a help to you. But please remember that it is so important that you vote the entire ballot. Every position is a critical position and will, in fact, direct your family. As you go through this electoral process, think back to these interviews to make the determination on what's best for you. I hope that you enjoyed this time with us. I hope you consider becoming a member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg NAACP because we do the real work. We love you. We hope to see you soon. Please stay safe. God bless you all, and good night.